we are having a conversation that could only take place between Americans. I don't think people in France sit around and say, does France still work?
There's a sense in which a lot of Americans went from thinking we were the best country in the world to suddenly we were the worst country in the world, and we really lose perspective. Even for blacks, I mean, it's been better in America than in places where they would have starved and died.
Well, wouldn't you say the two parties really won, basically?
No, I think they're
representing the same
real
people
differences.
pretty much. A guy contributes to both parties equally.
Certainly, people love their homes, but patriotism and love of home are two different things, aren't they?
Hello and welcome to Assignment America. I'm George F. Will. Tonight we're up to something a little different. With me are Maya Angelou, Doris Kearns, and Studs Terkel. For the last few months, the four of us have been seeking out interesting Americans who have something to say about our nation and the way we live. Tonight we're eliminating the middleman. The question we'll try to answer is this: does America still work? Studs Terkel, does America still work?
The big question, George, is for whom?
Howard Hughes leaves about 213 million of us, accepting the fact that it works for him.
Well, isn't that the question? The question of fewer and fewer people, it seems, run more and more of our lives. Isn't that the big question today? And the sense of despair and cynicism so many feel. So does it work? I think it has to be countered with that particular non-vision, really, but reality.
But that sounds to me like a no answer. You're saying for more and more people, life in America is more and more depressing.
At the moment, that might be it.
Maya, do you agree?
Well, I think that the soaring unemployment, and particularly, obviously, I'm interested in this area, particularly in the black communities or, you know, in minority communities, fewer people are working. There's that old saying that is a cliche because it works. It's been successful. It's been true so long, and that is the blacks, and include in that Latin speaking and so forth, are the last hired and the first fired.
But wouldn't it be a bit harsh to say that the American nation somehow suddenly can now be said not to work because we have 8.2% unemployment? I mean, that's a bit extreme, isn't it?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, it doesn't work, surely. Now, if we're talking about labor, that's one thing. Obviously, again, that large percentages of blacks do not, have not, and it seemingly have no chance of working unless there's a qualitative change. But then does it also manage, does it operate as a place where one could call home, you know, and love and have all the patriotism and so forth for it? It doesn't work for a large portion of people who are called Americans.
But you're surely not saying that, say, the majority of black people in the United States aren't patriotic or don't feel this love for the country.
One loves it. One of the reasons the South is so hard to give up is that it's such a beautiful place. You know, it's beautiful. Certainly, people love their homes, but patriotism and love of home are two different things, aren't they?
Sure. Doris, what's your impression? Is America in dire straits? Is it working poorly now?
You know, it seems to me that, to go back to part of what Studd said, that any society in almost any time in our history has been divided into the relatively few who have power and money and wealth and the many who are powerless. What's been different about America for the last, you know, several hundred years of its life is that a dream has bound together those powerless people and the powerful people, the dream that the powerless had that someday they were going to make it to the top. And as long as we had an expanding frontier, and expanding resources, and expanding educational system, that dream could work for enough people that they could think, I see my life tangibly better than my grandparents, so I really trust the system. I think the real question is now, I think we've reached a point, not just in America, but in the world, where we don't have those resources anymore, and where the tangible goods accumulating aren't really producing happiness. That extra toothbrush that's electric or that extra car is not really making people feel their life is better than their grandparents. And if the American people lose the dream that has distinguished them from everybody else, then it may be that the system still works, the social system, the political system, the economic system. I don't feel dire about all that collapsing. We always think it's collapsing when we live in it. But the dream that bound us together for a long time, the original dream, that may no longer be working.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I mean, I have to say that the dream that bound us together, I don't really see at any time in the United States, except those elite, whoever that group were, groups were, the elite groups, were bound together within themselves to support themselves on the, somebody else's shoulders, somebody else's head. I think that the history of the United States is one that would cause, I suppose, the three of you to blush if you really wanted to look at it. And from the moment the first people came to this country and began to kill off the Indians, and then use the slavery to sustain and bind together a nation.
Always was this double thread, the double thread of how the country came to being, the slave ships, the Indian genocide. At the same time, the Europeans, which by the way is the word used for whites in South Africa, European, properly used. When the Europeans came, they had sort of a dream, sort of an idea, and to some extent fulfilled. But come back to Doris's point, isn't it a myth fused to a dream? During the Roosevelt days, there was an attempt once to limit the income of people to about $25,000. There was that movement for a time. Object to it? Mostly working people. Because they thought, well, by God, my kid's going to make that big money. Now, I don't want him to restrict 25 G's a year at the time. So that, again, that myth and the dream was
You see, I want to ask you something too, George, but it's a sad statement that a dream, a hopeful dream, can only survive if one portion of the people are having a nightmare at the same time.
Yeah, but you see, you said a moment ago that American history would or should make us
I said
blush.
could.
Yeah,
Could.
blush. I don't blush at American history. I think it's without question the most astounding success story in American history, in world history. I'm sorry. Studs lives in Chicago, a city that is a microcosm of the United States. It's a city of immigrants, people who risked tremendous dangers to cross an ocean in small ships to get here, and I think by and large are not sorry they did so.
But that's true.
I have no argument about those people. I think about millions who were brought here, and in fact the first blacks were brought here in 1619, a year before the Mayflower docked. And the subsequent history until 1975, March, is one of nightmarish proportions.
There is this double thread. See, I don't think you're in disagreement with George. He's speaking of ethnic groups, of white groups that came and who had a rough time and have a better time here. But back to the theme of Chicago. Now, back to the theme of Chicago, we have Mayor Daley. And the myth is he makes the city work. And again, my question is for whom? Daley makes a city work for the big realtors in town to get fantastic breaks, for the cement lobby, for the bankers, because when you build all those big roads and expressways, you knock out a neighborhood, a community, as Bob Moses did in New York. Daley does.
But they keep re-electing Mayor.
Well, that's, again, several things are involved in the nature of the machine itself.
Sure.
But myth, again, myth and dream fused. And this seems to be the recurring theme, at least to me here. What do you think?
You know what I think is really hard? I know just in my own short life, actually. At the beginning when I grew up, I came from a family who had come over here from Ireland. For my father, for his father, it did work in the sense that he saw the move from Brooklyn, where he was brought up, to Long Island as a terrific opening. Yards, he could mow them. He could support his Brooklyn team by going into the city, but come out home. When I looked on that in the 1960s, when I was running around with my pickets as a somewhat radical left, because my vision at that time was my feelings about the blacks, I began thinking about the Indians, I suddenly thought it's crazy, that vision. It didn't work because I had a different perspective. Now I look back on both of those perspectives, and I think they were equally exaggerated.
Sure.
I mean, I think there's a sense in which a lot of Americans went from thinking we were the best country in the world to suddenly we were the worst country in the world, and we really lose perspective. Even for blacks, I mean, it's been better in America than in places where they would have starved and died.
Well, now, how do we know that? That's like saying
That's very hard.
I'm sure somebody rang the phone while I was talking on it. I mean, how
Okay,
can
it's tough. It's tough to know spiritually versus tangibly and all that. I agree. But I think it's so easy, and I've been guilty of it, to look at America without the perspective on its relationship to the world and be a part of it, because you demand more of it and you want more of it, so you can be so critical.
It is exactly that. It is because one cares enough, and because there are no alternatives, absolutely none, none feasible. One cares enough, and one continues to complain. One must. The minute we say that it's marvelous, or even not even it's marvelous, if we say it's good, that can placate, that can pacify, and we'll see no change.
When Doris was picketing for the New Left in the 1960s, I was cheerfully voting for Barry Goldwater, and both of us, I'm sure, from our vantage points at that point, said, well, America is doomed unless my view prevails. Mine didn't, and yours didn't.
That's right, neither
The
one.
majority of the nation was profoundly unmoved by either of us.
That's true.
Yet the country survives. And isn't this the case? We are having a conversation that could only take place between Americans. I don't think people in France sit around and say, does France still work?
Oh, I beg your pardon, I do.
I don't.
You think of Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, that whole group of intellectuals in France certainly do.
But I'm thinking,
I would grant you that they do, but I think
But
that
most French, I think George
But
is
we
right.
are
that
also not most.
look, there's a
If we were most Americans, then we wouldn't be here. Obviously, we are somehow unique. And certainly the same kind of unique people sit around in France and in Greece and in South Africa and West Africa, all over the world.
But don't you think there's a sense for people in France that France just is? Whereas in America, I remember once doing a study of the difference in French and American civic books for kids in like the 8th grade and the 10th grade and the 3rd grade. And in America, they were always asking the question as if it were possible that America could vanish one day. They were asking kids to look at the future and to see our political system. In France, their homeroom exercises were to memorize the name of the war dead. And the images were mother and earth and organic ties to the past, whereas America had its image, the future is going to be different from the past. We do have a sense of our possible extinguishment that I don't think other countries, they just are. You don't ask, does France work or Britain work? It is.
Well, work is a question you ask of a machine. Does the car work? Does the washing machine work? And there's a sense in which America was constructed. We put it together.
Who knows about the Poles? I don't believe in them
Yeah,
very
that's
much.
true,
But
too.
if you ask the Poles, there's a division that they find in the American people between a great deal of cynicism about their political institutions, rightly so, I would often argue right now, and yet still retaining an optimism about their personal life and their personal progress. And they make that, they say, I think I'm still doing all right. At least up till now they've said that. There's some beginning sense that they're not feeling that life's going to be as great for their kids or better than theirs. And that would be a big shift. The cynicism about politics goes and comes in cycles, in the 20s, 30s, 40s.
There's something else that's happening too, Doris. In supermarkets, I do my own kind of polling. So in supermarkets, generally I find myself in a supermarket where I'm the only black person. And women who ordinarily would just sort of go and get their goods and pass by will stop. I'll pick up a bag of flour, and there'll be an older white woman there and a younger white woman here, and we'll all look at each other. And it's a commiseration, an absolute. And I've found right up and down the coast in California, I'll go in for no apparent, really needing nothing, just to see. In Orange County, and I say, my goodness, is this really this high?
Well,
and they say, I don't know what we're going to do.
Well, but now look.
Now that's very serious. I mean, I don't mean just the complaint about the price, but the complaint has so startled them that they break through a rigid habit of prejudice.
Or you
very
know what
real.
else I think that shows? I mean, it seems to me there's been a tendency in American history when you've suffered from prices, from not having a nice house to live in, to think it was your own fault, that the reason I don't have it is because I didn't work hard enough. And that failure to mobilize collectively to realize the system itself is not giving me these chances is one of the reasons why the system hasn't changed very much. If what you're saying could happen more and more, that more people sit around together at that flower thing and they say, somebody's messing us up there, that's the chance for some organized political change,
Isn't this what is happening, Doris and George and Maya? This very change, it's not an obvious one, but it seems to be there. Like, people are saying those big shots. They never said the big shots before. They never said the rich are getting richer, poor. But they're aware of it. No, George, in the Depression of the 30s, the great many people accepted their lot. It was the few so-called
But they
subversives.
voted, Studs,
But
with
today it's
tremendous
different.
enthusiasm for a president who was denouncing the economic royalists and this sort of thing. So the rhetoric of that time was much inflamed. Isn't it the case that the American pain threshold has lowered considerably? I mean, and people who've been through the Depression, and you certainly have vivid memories of that, remember that the unemployment was much higher than today. There were virtually no compensation programs of
You
the
know
sort
what
that
ended the
exist
Depression?
today.
It wasn't the New Deal, it was the war. There
Sure.
were 10 million unemployed when the Nazis invaded Poland. Now the question to ask, do we need a war, hot or cold, for this economy to be a viable one? That's the big question. What do you think, George?
Oh, I think not. I think it's. I think this is a rich nation with a continental market and an industrious and educated population, and it takes a positively perverse genius on the part of the government to mess up the economy as bad as it has done.
Bravo.
And it seems to me that once people do precisely what people like me suggest, then the economy will get back in order. I mean, we all have our recipes.
I love this idea.
Look, the point is, where, if the country is suffering these perils and privations, where is the political response? The two parties seem to be dissolving, but they always seem to be dissolving. They get organized once every 4 years and churn up fairly moderate, predictable, familiar figures. No one comes out of the woodwork, or let alone out of the forest on a
Pretty
white
much
horse.
the same party, isn't it? Wouldn't you say the two parties are really one, basically?
No, I think they're
representing the same
real
people, pretty
differences.
much. A guy contributes to both parties equally. Very easily.
But the question is today, have we technologically reached a situation, and politically, where people feel so distant from their senses of their sources of power, where the states, the localities have dried up, they were always the sources of those movements earlier, and where television's taken over so much, there's a passivity among these people that even though they feel grievances, they don't know what to do about it. I don't think it takes away from their grievances to say they don't know where to turn right now.
George, in a sense, hasn't Doris hit something, the sense of impotence that people feel? Sense
And
of
impotent
worthlessness,
leaders, there's
too.
no one
But
around.
mostly impotence, that somebody up there, it's not even somebody anymore, something up there,
Something, a
thinking of
computer.
multinationals and more and more. And it's that feeling of, what can I
Studs,
do?
I think if you talk to, at random, 10,000 Americans, you wouldn't get 3 to complain about multinationals. I don't think that
No, they wouldn't
reflects
know,
the
perhaps
real
not
American
aware
world.
of that.
phrase.
But,
Dear God,
but the
take the
fact is it's there.
multinationals away before I wake up.
But they will say the big shots. They will say the big shots
true.
up there, and what can I do? That's the phrase that you'll hear quite often.
People have been running against big shots since the bank was an issue in the 1830s.
Where
That's
are the
as
leaders
American
who are
as
running?
apple pie.
I mean, where,
Oh,
where are
dear.
the leaders right now who are giving them a chance to have a channel? We can hit upon times where there's pretty fallow leadership, and I think we have in the union movement, in the farmers movement, in the national political
So we're looking for
movement. It's
leaders,
not the
Doris. I
people's
wonder if
fault.
that's the right approach, looking for leaders. Again, perhaps this is romanticizing, but to me, the grassroots, bottom-up things.
But they
I
always-
like
they
both. I
always
like
need-
both,
you have to
top-down
have
and
both.
bottom-up.
Yes.
But there has to be something, and I think it is happening.
You know, it's a funny thing.
Yeah.
For people like us, we sit around and we talk about leaders. I can't imagine any of us following a leader.
Oh, I
Americans
would.
don't like being led, particularly. Are you
I
looking
would.
for a leader?
Yes,
Maya?
you see, a good leader is also a good follower, and I'm an excellent leader. So I would follow someone if she or he was bright enough, you know, and I thought sincere enough and concerned himself, herself with me. I think there are some leaders, there's Jesse Jackson and Andrew Young and some marvelous young people coming along.
We're out of time, so we'll have to go out and look for our
You're
own.
a hell of a good catalyst.
I don't agree
thanks for
very
coming.
much with you.
No, I like this discussion very much.